Hi, welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of Social Anxiety Life, the podcast. I'm Sarah,
I'm Simon.
and on our podcast, we discuss all things social anxiety, drawing on our personal experiences and using that to help others.
So, in this first episode of Season 2, we're going to explore a topic that came in from one of our listeners, and that's the topic of whether social anxiety changes with age. And we'd like to give credit to a listener who wishes to remain anonymous, who lives in an undisclosed Zone 6 location.
Oh, sounds very mysterious.
Well, I think this particular person likes the air of mystique
enough.
about them, and I really applaud that. So, social anxiety and age, I think, needs to start with quite a pertinent contribution, which we had via Instagram from Donny, and he said that it depends on the person, and I think that's a really good place to start, because people who experience social anxiety will experience it in possibly different ways, or it will manifest itself differently. They'll have had different experiences from younger to older, so it's very dependent upon the individual. I think even with us, I think it's going to it varies, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the contributions we've got for this episode sort of reflect that. We've had some that talk very positively about changes as they've got older, and some not so positive.
So, thinking about social anxiety and age, I would like to start by reflecting personally on my experiences. And I would say, even sort of thinking 5 years ago, I wouldn't even use those words.
No.
So I have social anxiety. I wouldn't have said that at all. But now we use it very commonly and quite interchangeably when we're talking about things. And I find now that I talk about it quite openly with other people.
Yeah.
And I don't know then if, as I got older, I can now see it more clearly.
Mm-hmm.
I can see it that within myself that explains something.
Yeah. So maybe it's about your understanding of your own social anxiety, because I'm not sure when I was younger that I ever thought I had social anxiety. I would always identify as just being shy or just being very quiet. I don't think I ever thought of it as social anxiety. That's definitely something that I've identified as I've got older.
I definitely think that the language that's used, and we've touched on this in quite a few episodes, whether it's shy, quiet, reserved, introverted, autistic, non-verbal, all of those words could be used when actually you have social anxiety. And I think as you get older, and I think what our contributions show, that people, I think, do feel more empowered to say it.
Yes. Yeah.
I think kicking off with one of our contributions from Instagram, Shanette says to us that, you know, she's gotten older, and she thinks that you care less about what people think because you've got less time. So, you know, when you're adulting, as it were, and you've got your job, you're doing your other stuff, you should take the attitude that you shouldn't care what other people think, particularly in those social situations. I think that's quite a bold statement.
Yeah. I guess it's that idea that as you get older and grow into an adult, you have more things to think about, more responsibilities, and maybe you have less time to worry about those kinds of things.
I'm inclined with that comment to agree with it to a certain extent, because I think as I've got into my 40s, I would say that I worry less about what people think, but it still doesn't disguise the fact that social situations that I'm in, I still experience social anxiety, sometimes to quite a high extent. Thinking about work, for example, I've said before on the podcast that I'm a visiting teacher. I go to lots of different schools.
Yeah.
Teaching the children, there's no issue there. The other adults, to an extent, there's some social anxiety there because you're in a social situation, but because it's teaching and I know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
it's less hard for me to have social interactions with people that I work with. But I will say that I do find myself being more aware of how tired I get through social interactions.
Yeah.
I think it's very much being able to recognize more how you feel. And it's that balance between what you're doing for yourself as opposed to what's the sort of societal norms or what's expected of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can relate to a certain degree to that contribution about caring less what people think. Because I think in certain situations I have got better at not caring so much. But as you quite rightly said, it doesn't necessarily make the social anxiety go away just because you care a little bit less what people think. I think those worries and the overthinking still very much happens.
That ties in really nicely to another contribution we've had from Michael. And he talks about the core issue, which is the social anxiety, that stays the same. And I resonate a lot with that it stays the same whatever age that you are. And you develop your own coping mechanisms. And I'm sure that we may have coping mechanisms that are similar or they may be different.
Yeah.
And the crux of it comes down to, I think that social anxiety is a neurodivergent trait. I know we said it links to autism. I know it links to introversion, but it's when you're in those social events, you're nodding along, you're trying to maintain eye contact and whatever. That's what the neurotypical view is, that you should look at people, you should do this, you should do these things whilst you're in the social situation. When actually, I feel a bit more confident now not to do those things because it makes you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Eye contact with some people, it's painful.
Yeah.
Not physically painful, but it's hard because you're looking at a person and it's almost, it's that judgment, it's that overthinking kicks in really, really deeply. And, it's all very well, you can come up with your strategies to make yourself appear more confident, but it's fake.
Yeah.
So why be fake?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. As you said, it's that thing of those feelings are still there and they might be buried a little bit further down because you've developed certain strategies that help you to cope. And I really resonated with that because as I've got older and I've started to understand my social anxiety more and talk more openly about it, I do think I've developed some strategies and some things that helps me now that I didn't have years ago. But I still get those worries. I still have the overthinking. I still have the feeling of panic before social events. That's never gone away. But I suppose my ways of dealing with it have improved.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for me. It's the same. I think I've developed strategies to cope. So I know, even like going to the supermarket, I get anxiety in the supermarket if someone comes and talks to me. I don't have anxiety about going to the supermarket because I know what I want and I know I need stuff from there. I just don't particularly want people coming up to me and talking to me. Even you get to the till. Some cashiers, are very chatty. You put your stuff through the till, and they're like, "How's your day?" And sometimes I'm just thinking, oh, please don't ask me how my day is. I feel like I'm quite content paying for my shopping and getting out of it.
Yeah.
So my way through that is I respond, but not a lot. I don't say a lot. And my coping strategy is I'm packing my bag.
Yeah.
I pack my bag because I need to look where everything's going. I can't distract myself from doing that.
Yeah.
So I just get on with it. But even like, you know, like I went out for lunch today as well. And, you know, I quite happily sat away in the corner.
Yeah.
And, you know, the necessary social interaction was I had to ask for what I wanted.
Yeah.
And that was fine. I had to ask for the bill. That was all fine. But apart from that, there was no social interaction whatsoever. I just got left to get on with it on my own. And I've always done that, though. I've always gone out on my own and done things for myself. And that makes me feel quite happy.
Yeah.
But on the same sort of token, as it were, I've talked before about, you know, going to bars and clubs and whatever on my own.
Yeah.
But it's on my terms. So I go on my own. I don't have to talk to people in those situations. I can just quietly sit on my own.
Yeah, it's in your control, I suppose.
And I think I used to feel quite anxious in a different way because of that, in that fact some people would think, why are they there on their own? But now, I'd say now I don't care, because I do sit there and I do, you know, if I fancy like going for a little drink, or I want to go to a club night, at least with a club night, because the music's so loud, it's a sensory hit from the music, and that's primarily why I'm going there. I'm not going there to talk to other people. I'm going there for the music. If there's it doesn't bother me then there's lots of people there. And sometimes, you know, if you talk to people there, it's usually about music or it's about where you are, and that's manageable.
Yeah. I think a strategy that I've definitely used a lot more in recent times and been more confident to use is that thing of just stepping away. So if I'm in a social situation and I'm with a lot of people, I will just leave the room or I'll just go outside for 5 minutes. And I think I used to feel very self-conscious about doing that, because I think, oh, they're going to wonder why I've left. Does it look strange that I'm just leaving for 5 minutes and coming back? But actually, sometimes I just need that little bit of time, that little 5 minutes to just take a breath, just have a little bit of quiet and almost sort of regather myself to go back in. And that really helps me. But that's not something that I used to do. It's something that I've kind of worked out myself, is a strategy that helps me. I don't know if you do the same.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I do that a lot more now, because, you know, if you get outside, depending on where you are, it's a bit, you get a little hit of nature, whether it's like the wind or the rain or sun, or like if it's in a garden. Garden's my favourite one. Like if you can get into a garden for like 5-10 minutes, that really solves or goes a long way to solve the social anxiety for me.
Yeah, it just gives you that little bit of time to just take a breath, relax, because I think it is that feeling, isn't it, a lot of the time with social anxiety, not that you're putting on a performance, but it is that feeling of, I have to be my best self, and so much overthinking and trying to be really smiley and trying to like come across as friendly. And so sometimes taking that little bit of time away from the social situation, for me, just helps me to kind of take a breath, regroup, and then go back in.
And I think the key, as you said, it's doing all that without fear of judgment.
Yeah.
I think, generally speaking, I do find that more people are okay with it.
Yeah.
Not that now I realise now I don't need them to be okay about it. I have to think about myself.
Yeah. And
this sort of links in a little bit more with another contribution we've had from Samantha. She talks about that our perspective changes, and she talks about having less time for meaningless stuff.
Yes.
So because you have a better awareness of yourself, and she says really succinctly that being able to tolerate the social expectations has less impact on you, because you have awareness of yourself and what your needs are. And she says also about the value that she has in the connection of people that she's chosen to be with,
Yeah.
rather than hanging out with those that don't value her.
Yeah.
That's a really powerful
It
statement.
is. And do you feel that that's something that comes with age, that you care less maybe about people that aren't going to be a huge part of your life? You sort of have that thought of, right, I'm going to this party, might never see these people again, so does it really matter what they think of me?
You know what? With parties, I'm still in two minds whether I'm going or not.
Oh, same.
Um, so, but I will say, I'd say 10 years ago, I knew more people than I do now.
Hmm.
But I would say I have a better, smaller group of people.
Hmm.
I'd say five or six people that I have those deeper conversations with, which I appreciate much more, and it makes me feel happier.
Oh, absolutely.
So I really agree with that point of valuing the people that I choose to be with, rather than hanging out with those that don't value me. And maybe also linked to that, Samantha talks about, you know, being older, sometimes being ignored or being perceived as old,
Mm,
and finding that very rude.
yes. Yeah.
Because, if you take us as an example,
Hmm.
I mean, I was born in the late 70s. You were
Yes.
born
In the
later than that.
1990s.
But I would say, you know, people don't often say that I'm the age that I actually am.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that's because of the way that I present myself.
Yes.
And yeah, Samantha's point is really good, and that's really key.
Yeah. No, I think she made a great point there about your tolerance as you get older, and I guess what you place meaning on. But equally, it's not the case for everyone, is it?
I think following on from that, Jason got in touch with us via Instagram, and he links in with Samantha's point about, you know, as you get older, it's having more to worry about, other
Mhm.
things to worry about. So having more responsibilities, things that things that happen,
Mm.
depends on the sort of social circles that you're in, and sometimes you have to put a brave face and carry on with things, which can contribute
Oh, absolutely.
to not just social anxiety but generalized anxiety, because there are things that we worry about all the time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And with Jason's contribution, yeah, it's the impact of things that you're doing on a daily
Hmm.
basis.
Yeah, because he makes the point that maybe it's not an age thing as such, but more just that as you get older, you experience more life, you get used to life, things progress in different ways, you're on a journey. So it's not necessarily an age thing, it's about your experiences and
Mm-hmm.
things that happen to you in your life. And if, very traumatic things happen or you're going through hard times, that's going to affect your anxiety. If you're having really positive times, that can positively affect your anxiety. So I suppose you could almost see it as anxiety, maybe it doesn't just get better with age or get worse. Maybe it's something that fluctuates
Mm.
throughout life.
Yeah, to tie in with that and actually sort of turning things on its head a little
Mm.
bit, because we've talked so far about social anxiety changing possibly for the better, certainly in our experiences as we've got more experience. One contribution came in through Instagram, an anonymous contribution about they think their social anxiety has got worse as they've got older,
Mm.
and this is due to life events and how they're less tolerant or able to deal with things.
Yeah.
I I don't know.
Yeah. I can understand that mention of tolerance, becoming less tolerant of things as you get older. But we've also touched on that of, do you then just start saying no to things more? If you're not tolerant, is it the way forward to say no, I'm not going to go to that event, and being confident in saying no, which isn't always an easy thing to do.
Saying no, I mean, if you say no all the time,
Yeah,
it increases the risk of being isolated.
absolutely.
And that actually comes across in our final, not our final contribution, but another contribution we've had through Facebook from Hannah. And Hannah made a point of saying how she loves listening to the podcast after years of feeling like she was the only one that felt like this, which is a lovely
Oh, amazing.
comment to hear. But she talks very openly about, having, thinking about opportunities that she may have missed or been unhappy with decisions and things that caused her anxiety, such as talking on the phone or somebody in a shop. There's anxieties around going out, conversation, talking to groups, interviews seem to have got worse. And then her overthinking has become more prominent.
Yeah.
And being aware that she may have engineered some kind of isolation, which leads into the anxiety.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting there that she talks about those sort of anxieties she had as a child being things like talking to someone in a shop, and she's not experiencing that so much now, whereas her anxieties now are more around talking in groups and interviews. But, you were just talking about the anxiety when you're in a shop.
Mm.
So that just shows how much it can vary person to person.
I think the point about being isolated is to say you keep not going to social events, but then flipping that on a positive that you enjoy your own company.
Yeah.
Because, sometimes, I have everything switched off and I quite sit here quite happily with a book
Yeah.
or watch TV, and that suits me just fine. That's not a problem with that.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's the point. I think it's putting your own needs first
Mm-hmm.
and being comfortable with that. And if anyone challenges that,
Yeah.
I mean, it's very easy for me to sit here and say if someone challenges it, you should just ignore them and whatever. But that's hard.
Yeah. Oh, it's very hard, especially when it's people who are very ingrained in your life. If it's like a parent or a sibling or a partner or a best friend, you can't you don't feel that you can say no all the time because you value that relationship or that friendship and you want to make the effort. So it's a hard balance to get, I think.
I think back to when I was a child. I think some of the things I did or I thought I had to do because that's what's expected of me. At times I would say no, but because I didn't understand what it was that was stopping me from doing it, and because I didn't have the strategies in place to cope with it.
Yeah.
So now like social anxiety, you can see like a nice big box next to us of these fidget tools.
Yeah.
And those stuff help me enormously in social situations. That I have something to focus on, and I think I've had those like 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Things might have been different, and it wouldn't have had the impact into adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to, I guess, give a flip side for myself. On the one hand, what you were saying earlier about enjoying your own company, I can very much identify with that. I like sometimes being on my own. Sometimes I enjoy not having to make conversation, not having to be around anyone really. But then on the flip side of that, in recent years, I've been, I suppose, exposed to a lot more social situations. And actually, I think it's benefited me because I have found over the last few years that very slowly I am finding certain social situations a little bit easier than I used to because I've had to go out of my comfort zone and I've sort of pushed myself to to be in these social situations that I really didn't want to be in, but I can actually see that it's benefited me. So I suppose that's the flip side to it is, not that I'm saying you should force yourself to do social things, because that's not going to be a good thing for everyone, but I can see a benefit of kind of both sides of it.
The ideal situation would be that, we've said this before, going to a social event, someone knowing about your anxiety
Yeah.
and asking you what if you are coming,
Yes.
what would you need to help you in those social situations.
Oh, absolutely. Or just being understanding. If you say, no, it's going to be too much for me and I'm not going to come.
Mm-hmm.
I always think it's amazing when a person recognizes and appreciates that.
Yeah, I think that's the goal. The goal
Yeah.
is for that to happen. That you go to social events. If it's too much after 30 minutes, see you later.
Yeah.
And those people who gossip about it, I think that's lack of understanding. Because when you have it, and it's amazing actually that the range of people who have it. Because I know, as a result of this podcast, I mean, I know people in their 70s
Yeah.
who say they had social anxiety and they're at age now where they don't care.
Yeah.
And they had it crippled them when they were younger because it was fear of being judged and overthinking about how they're perceived. How they're perceived. That ultimately what it comes down to is what other people think.
Yeah.
And maybe it's sort of time to think, well, everyone's got their own opinion anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, that would be the ultimate goal. I would love to get to a point where I just don't care and therefore my social anxiety is not an issue. Whether I'll ever get to that point, I don't know. But, I'm very envious of the people who've got there.
I think that's a pertinent moment to end episode 1 of season 2, and it's been a very deep and meaningful discussion.
It has. I mean, I think it's been a great episode for a start of a season.
It has, I think. And bringing it all together now, the feedback that we receive from listeners means a lot to us. So if you have enjoyed our content, please follow us on Spotify or your chosen podcast platform to receive updates about future episodes. Also, please follow us in our Facebook groups, Social Anxiety Life podcast group.
Yes.
It is visible on Facebook, so if you search for it, you'll find it. Or email us at socialanxietylife2023@gmail.com.
Yes, and we can't finish without mentioning that we did hit a pretty big milestone this last few days, wasn't it? 2,000 listens for our podcast, and the fact that we've been going for less than a year and we've hit 2,000, massive achievement, but that's obviously thanks to everyone who keeps tuning in, listening and contributing. So thank you so much.
Stay tuned for more exciting episodes.
See you next week.
Bye.